All right, everyone. Whoa, that's even louder, a lot louder. Okay, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. You're in the final stretch, the last session of the day. Tools and tips for KPIs and budget management. And I'm going to sit down and not read too much into the fact that my boss asked me to attend a session on budget management.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm John Weathersby, State Estimating Engineer, and today I'm going to be sharing some information with you about cost estimates and highlighting a few challenges that we've had recently with estimating and some steps that we've taken to address those challenges and hopefully improve the quality of our cost estimates. So the estimates that I'm referring to today are the preliminary construction cost estimates, and these are done multiple times throughout the design life of a project. They can be anywhere from conceptual or feasibility stage up through final design. They are considered public information, so they are shown on the 12-month let list. They are incorporated into the STIP, and they're shared with our industry partners externally through various channels. These estimates primarily serve as a tool for planning and budgeting purposes, and they help to establish the construction cost for a project, which is an important part of the project budget. One thing to note here is that when you have large cost increases on projects, either between estimates or as a project gets close to final turn-in and final quantities, those increases may require funding shifts and/or schedule changes that could impact other projects in the program. So it's important to get these estimates as accurate as we can at every design stage as the project is being designed. That will allow us to continue to deliver our projects on time and within budget. So one of the biggest issues we faced over the last couple of years is significant increases in material and labor cost. This is a result of multiple economic factors, including near-record inflation. We've had supply chain issues that have affected material availability, and we've had labor shortages, which have driven up the cost of labor for our contractors. You can really see this illustrated in the graph on the right here. This is the National Highway Construction Cost Index, published by the FHWA. And this is the index over the last 20 years. And if you look to the far right-hand side, like right here, you see a dip. That represents the third quarter of 2020. And in the 2 years since that third quarter dip, construction costs have increased 50% according to this index. And that has certainly made estimating a challenge and has contributed a lot to the increased cost of our projects during that time. We've adjusted our estimating practices to try and compensate for that, and we're now focusing really on the most recent bid history that we have to price our projects. So we're looking at bid history from the last 6 to 9 months and incorporating price information from those projects as we estimate current projects. And I would recommend that if any division personnel or consultants are working on estimates, that you do that as well. Really look and concentrate on the most recent bids that you've had, because those are going to be a better reflection of the current market than using things like historical bid averages or more historical cost figures. Another issue that we've seen that's come to light in the last year is that we've had a large number of outdated cost estimates on our let list. When I say outdated, I mean we've done more recent estimates that have not been verified, and therefore they aren't shown on our 12-month let list. The cost verification memo is the mechanism that we have that updates SAP and updates the data that feeds the let list and all of our reports. And if that memo is not distributed, then nobody sees that updated cost and the latest estimate values are not captured. Last fall, I checked the let list, and we had over 50 projects with more recent unverified estimates, and those 50 projects added up to more than $250 million in additional cost from what we were showing on the let list. So you can see it can really add up, and it's just a reminder that you need to send those memos out anytime that you get updated cost estimates. And this page from the let list, by the way, I'm not calling out these 3 projects as being a problem. These are just samples of where the estimate is shown on the let list. So to address this issue, our Chief Operating Officer, Joey Hopkins, distributed a memo last summer, and that memo requires a verified cost estimate no more than 3 months old for a project to be added to the 12-month let list. We've seen a lot of improvement since that time. That requirement took effect on September 1st of last year, and I anticipate that this will continue to improve as more projects come onto the let list with that new requirement. And the last issue that I'll touch on here is that we've seen significant increases in our pay items and quantities as a project progresses through design, particularly at the plan in hand stage. We've met several times recently with project management to discuss this issue, and the consensus is that our cost estimate spreadsheets were lacking in the detail that we were looking for in those spreadsheets, and that if we didn't specifically request that detail and ask for it, that we were not going to get it. So based on that, we've gone back and updated our cost estimate spreadsheet to incorporate more detail that is more reflective of the level of design that the project is in at the time. And here is just showing the location of that new spreadsheet. It's on our Contracts Resources section of our Contract Standards tab on the Connect site. And that file has been updated about 2 weeks ago, so it is out there and available now. And we would like for everyone to start using that as soon as you can with any future estimate requests. So one of the revisions that we've done is we've added a project information tab, and Katrina Feltes did a lot of the work for this tab, and we appreciate that, Katrina. This is just trying to get more specific project information that could potentially affect the cost, but may not be directly represented by the pay items and quantities. So here we're looking for things like complex traffic control phasing, staged construction, anticipated night work, heavy conflicts with utilities, or presence of a railroad, moratoria that could affect a contractor's ability to do certain activities throughout the year. Anything like that that you think may affect the cost potentially, we would like to know about that. And you really cannot over-communicate this type of information, so it's better to go ahead and let us know so we can take it into consideration when we're pricing our estimates if you have aspects of the project or characteristics that you think may potentially affect the cost. Other updates that we made to these spreadsheets, we've gone in and expanded the pay items themselves for pretty much all the disciplines included. That's just an attempt to tie this cost estimate better to the actual pay items involved in the work for every project. And the most robust changes here we've done to the plan in hand or 13-month let list tab. Really just trying to capture the level of detail that is available at that stage. And since that's the last estimate that's typically done before a project comes onto the 12-month let list, we want to capture as much detail as we can and really get the most accurate estimate we can at that stage. And here's a couple of examples of the updates that we did to that tab. I've got the old and new versions of the erosion control section and the utility construction section. You can see previously for erosion control, we used to just ask for one line item, erosion control in acres. And we've expanded that out and now have a couple dozen items of the standard typical items we see for erosion control work. Really, again, just trying to tie the cost more to what's going to be required for that project and trying to avoid using generic or average type cost for these things. Similarly, with utility construction, we used to ask for water line relocation and sewer line relocation in linear feet. We've expanded that to about 20 pay items or so. And really just have various pipe sizes, fittings, valves, and things that we would typically expect to see with utility construction work. So more detail, more project-specific information, hoping to produce more realistic and accurate cost estimates. Those are a few modifications that we've made so far. This is a work in progress. We're going to continue to review that spreadsheet and our estimating processes and figure out what's working, maybe update the sheets more as we determine that's necessary. This is a collaboration when we're doing these estimates between various stakeholders. So we've got estimating staff, we've got the designers, divisions, and project management, of course, is involved. And we really need to keep the lines of communication open between all those groups so that we can capture as much detail in these estimates as possible going forward. We do ask for your feedback on this and comments, so if you see things that are working well, you can let us know about that. If you see things that you recommend changing or adding to our spreadsheet, we would love to hear about that as well. Feel free to contact us and provide that feedback or ask questions. We're available anytime. And this is my contact information and Karen Lovering, her information as well. Karen is the preliminary estimate squad leader, and her group prices these estimates, so she would be your primary contact for these estimates. But really, either one of us, you get in touch, and if you have any questions, need help finding the spreadsheet, or have any feedback related to the spreadsheet or the estimating process, please let us know. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Claire for budget management.
Can you ask that question?
Yeah, okay. We were going to hold them to the end, but sure, go ahead.
Can I?
Sure.
In view of rising cost of materials and some unexpected, unforeseen circumstances in your standard preliminary estimating sheets, have you updated the percentages for, like contingency and the engineering stuff, or do you intend to?
We're looking into that. ITRI has done some studies of our contingencies, and we're continuing to investigate and see if we need to make some revisions there. So that's going to be an ongoing thing in the near future.
Is it already up? Sorry. Did you want to have notes?
I can do it when I get it, or do you want it?
Well, hold, please.
Go ahead and finish it.
Did you want it? I don't know how to.
Yeah, you do this.
This one? Yeah. And I have the dots. Okay. Everything is fine. Okay. All right. Hello, I'm Claire Fullerton. I'm a consultant with Gannett Fleming, and I am going to kick us off here for tools and tips for KPIs and budget management, and then I'm going to hand it over to Allison, who's your state value management engineer. So when we're talking about budget management and KPIs, what we're really going to be focusing on today is about the accountability and within the NCDOT's mission statement. And so the purpose of our presentation today is to review the available tools for cost estimating and budget management, as well as review how to establish and monitor key performance indicators. So with that, the budget management policy. So as a lot of you know, there was sort of an emphasis on the budget management policy that took place Earlier last year, it's been talked about in project management calls, and today we're going to kind of highlight some of those things, go over the tools, and then talk about an upcoming tool that's going to be available to you. And so John alluded to this in his presentation too, is like, why does it matter, looking at cost increases and overdrafts? And one of those things is, just simply put that, there's a finite funds available to you, and you really have to be mindful of that. If a project increases in one place, it's going to remove it from another place. And so what is your role? So as project managers, once the estimate is done, as John talked about earlier, it then goes and gets going, and you are responsible for managing your budgets. Once it moves into construction, this responsibility transfers over to the resident engineers. But it's important to look at, if you have a project and you're coming into a situation where there's, the projections are showing that you're going to need additional funding, it is your responsibility to go ahead and start taking some additional steps to deliver the project. So what tools do you have to assist you in budget management to sort of keep track of that and make sure that you don't get into that situation where you, are going to run out of money and that you stay on top of it and things like that? So there's a couple of things. There are some detailed guides. There's SOPs from the central units. They gave you step-by-step instructions. This is located on the preliminary engineering site. There's also a monthly report from the regional accountants, which I'll show in a minute. And there is an existing dashboard in EBS that's public and everyone has access to. So this is just a snapshot of sort of the step-by-step tools that are available on the preliminary engineering site. So it's there for you. This is updated consistently. It stays up to date. I think we've gone through like 8 iterations of it. So it has the latest and greatest information. You should not download it. You should go to the site to make sure you have the latest. Another tool that's available is, this is the report that the regional accountants pull and distribute internally. So it does pull all of the data comes from SAP. Now the gray part, that's a report that can be generated at any time. They do it monthly. But the one thing that they add on that isn't part of that self-generating report is they also include details on the AFRA. So if you want to know kind of where your project is in the AFRA status in relation to what's available in SAP, that's also there. So one of the things you can do if your project is, getting into a situation where you're running out of budget is really look at, how can you review the scope of the project? How can it be reduced to meet the needs of the project within the existing budget? Again, following those SOPs and, working on really identifying, what happened in the budget, why wasn't it enough? Getting back to John's group to make sure you share that information so estimates coming forward are more accurate, creating those feedback loops through the CLEAR program to just make sure that, while something's happened to not have your project within the budget that you were anticipating, we don't want to make that mistake again, and so making sure you take the time to kind of take those corrective actions and share that information. And so who can you ask for help? Well, if you're looking at, reviewing the scope of the project, the Value Management Office, Allison over here, can help you. There's lots of opportunities, either through value engineering, cost containment activities, risk assessments can sometimes be a helpful tool. So there are a lot of resources at your disposal to be able to really work on that. So that's kind of what is. What I'm going to talk about next is a tool that we've been developing that's in QC right now. It's using Tableau, and it's looking at bringing all of the budget data that's available and kind of parsing it out into a more easy to use and interactive dashboard. So I'm just going to walk through it. It is still in the QC environment. And it's using static data. So what that means is we're pulling information from SAP and HiCams on a specific day and creating these visualizations, which means the next day it's out of date. The next steps for this is to connect it to live data so that it stays up to date consistently and that you're able to go and check on it at any time. So this is just a way to look at it. I'm going to walk through some of the slides. This is Tableau, so if you are with NCDOT, you do have access to Tableau dashboard. This is, like I said, in the QC environment, which just means that we're working towards making an enterprise solution so multiple people can access it, but you yourself could create a Tableau dashboard. It would just be a local to you. So here's the first look. It's looking at all the projects in a division. It just shows you kind of the total budget amount, where projects are based on budget % complete. On this one, this can give you a look at all the projects. This can give you a look at, projects that are over or encroaching budgets. And then this can tell you, regarding if, based on the overdraft initiative, if the waiver is required as a part of that, if that WBS falls in that category. It also talks about, if a temporary exemption has been granted. And then we also are pulling in HiCAMS data. So when we were looking at this, so it's not just for preliminary engineering, as I mentioned before, when you're in preliminary engineering, it's project managers, but then it moves over into HiCAMS for construction. And so we're also looking at connecting in that HiCAMS data so it has a full life cycle and a comprehensive look. We also have, so all the HiCAMS details are located in here. And then you can also go by WBS. So if you want to look at a specific WBS versus a project or versus a division, you can do that as well. So that just sort of gives you a high-level look at what it looks like based on WBS. So, like I said, this is just currently in QC. We've vetted it with different people throughout the department to get their buy-in, and the next step is to, like I said, see if we can move forward connecting to live data and then what it looks like as an enterprise solution for NCDOT. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Allison.
Good afternoon. I'm so excited that you guys are here and hanging in. I know that I'm the last one. I'm going to try to get done early. Shh, don't tell anybody. But anyway, so I'm going to talk to you about KPIs. Thank you, Claire, and thank you, John, for y'all's great information. A lot of what they talked about could be beneficial in the data analysis and looking at the things that I'm going to mention to you. So what is a KPI? A KPI is a key performance indicator. Effective KPIs provide targets and milestones, and then also the data that you're collecting can provide insights that can help you improve your decision-making processes. So I don't know about you guys, but when I hear the words KPI and I hear metrics and I hear all that, I think of NCDOT's goals and our dashboards and our VIP and all those things that you're like, yay. So, but they are important, and those are things that have been set, by our upper management, the Board of Transportation or whoever, that affect the whole organization. And each of us in the work we do, they do contribute to those overall goals. Sorry, I'm just trying to scroll down to my notes. Getting old, so I can't see the things anymore. But the work we do does affect these metrics, and it does help that. But then also there is a way for us to apply KPIs to our everyday work and the programs and the projects and the things that we are trying to accomplish within our units and our offices. What we need to do, though, is it's beneficial for us to define those KPIs and the goals for that smaller scale. So obviously this is much larger, this is for the state, and certainly for us, you want to look at something more related to your day-to-day activities. Okay. So again, this is me, so y'all are going to understand how ridiculous I am, but for me, I use the terms KPI and metric interchangeably. Dashboards, how does that fit? So this is just to let you know, so key performance indicators, KPIs, are individual metrics that can be displayed on a dashboard to track key data measurements. So here's what you need to think about. So a lot of us are engineers, and I'm sure y'all have heard before, a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. So a KPI is a metric but not all metrics are KPIs. All right. That helped me. I don't know if it helped Sean. All right, so KPIs are those specific measurements that are used to track progress towards specific goals. On the other hand, the metrics can be any type of data that's collected as part of a routine business operations. And then again, the dashboards are where we're displaying that data. So Tableau's perfect dashboard data displayer. So let's talk about developing KPIs for a second. This is, I don't want to say it's made up. I did some Googling and some such. There's a lot of different information you're going to find on this. I'm going to share with you at the end an example of a project where we've done something with this, but from what I've found, this is a good process to kind of look at developing in a KPI. And the very first thing that you want to talk about is your overall business strategy. So like, what is your goals? What is your vision? What is your mission within your office, right? So again, for value management, you know, we have a lot of different programs. And so each of our programs are probably going to have some KPIs related to them because they're each one going to have a goal. But then as an overall arching thing, value management has a mission and we have our own goals. So we want to think about that strategy as we go into the next part of setting our goals. So, you know, looking at our objectives, what do we want to accomplish? Once we understand what we want to accomplish, then we look at, you know, long-term, short-term goals, set some of those that'll help us achieve that strategy, that mission, that value. Then we want to look at critical success factors. And what those are those are the things that are necessary for your team to be successful. So you have to achieve those to be successful. Those are those critical pieces. And so you've got to make sure that you're getting those. And once you get those, kind of everything fits around that. So you use those to create those specific metrics that you're going to measure the progress that you're making towards your goals. It's through monitoring or through the measuring and everything that we can see where we're succeeding and also where we need to improve. And that's through that analysis part, and then of course the monitoring comes in after that. As we've measured the data through the metrics, then we look at the data and we figure out where we need to, you know, are we doing great or do we need to do some stuff? So how do you know if your metric is effective? Well, an effective metric will measure value. It allows you to report out on your value for accountability. And then, again, we just talked about, should you need to make adjustments, you can. It also identifies some of those knowledge gaps. You probably can't read this. I can't even read it on this screen, so I'm going to read it from here. It says, our process is extremely efficient. And then she's like, yeah, but you're not actually going anywhere. So, you know, you got to have those effective metrics in place, effective KPIs, to make sure that you're measuring the whole picture and seeing all of the places. So, yeah, you can have a really efficient process, but if it's not delivering on your goals or helping you meet your strategy, then it is not an effective KPI for you. So some of your types of effective measures, there's reporting, and that could be like legislative requirements, adjustments, knowledge gap identification. Just these are different ways for you to have those measures, basically, or what's going to look like. I'm going to skip ahead because it's a lot of information. Okay, so as you've created your KPI and you are now looking at the data that you're measuring, you know, what are we going to do with that? And I don't know if any of you guys were in Heather Fulgham's session this morning before lunch, but she made a quote that I wrote down because I was like, this is perfect, and I'm going to put this in my presentation. But she said, metrics can reveal uncomfortable truths. And that's absolutely right. You know, if you're having an effective metric, like we don't need to say, okay, I need to come up with a goal that I know we can achieve to show that we're doing great stuff, because that's not effective. The effectiveness of what we need to be measuring is are we really doing in our groups or in our offices or the products we're producing or whatever it is that we do. Everybody in DOT does so many different things. Like, are we actually being successful in what we're doing? Are we meeting time things, you know, or whatever it is? Again, everybody does so many different things. Really set those goals, really think of the mission that you want to reach, and then actually look at the data. You know, put it in place. And I really, again, appreciated Heather's presentation where she was like, you know, we created this information, we really looked at this different data, and they realized that they had some shortfalls. She was like, it's the uncomfortable truth of knowing that you're not always meeting, but What she also said is through that, you're finding those pinch points. You're finding those areas that need that improvement. So it can reveal some great stuff. It can reveal to you that you were doing a fantastic job, and also that's great information to send to your bosses. But at the same time, in the legislature, but at the same time, it can reveal those pinch points for you. So the benefits of data, I pretty much just covered that whole slide and everything I just preached on. But the term that you've probably heard a lot is the data-driven decision-making, and that's what this is. You have the effective KPI through your measurement, through your metrics, you're getting that data, and then that data helps you to drive those decisions. Again, a lot of us at the department are engineers. I like numbers. And I don't know how many times I've heard before, what's the thing that I was going to say? I had it in here. Anyway, it's by the numbers, right? Or we've got to use the numbers to justify the different things we want to do. We have to have the data to show that the change needs to be made. And so this is it. Like this is what we need to do, is be able to collect the data, show where those changes need to be made, where those improvements need to happen. And again, no offense to John, and we talked about this beforehand, but like in construction, if they're collecting this data and showing that all the estimates are not working, and we're always going over, getting that information back and closing that communication loop back to estimating lets them know that there's an issue. If we just keep trying to move the goalpost and say, well, we're not meeting this, but we're going to keep, that's not really, it's not going to be effective to create change and help us to better reach our goals in the future. So understanding your data, this is pretty self-explanatory, a good foundation of data-driven decision-making. You need to manage it, and it needs to be meaningful information. So it has to be meaningful, it has to make sense, it has to be clear, it has to be clear not only for you, but also for others who are going to be using this data, the data that you're sharing with them. So do make sure that your data is telling a story. It's not just about the dashboard. The dashboards are very helpful to display the data, but at the same time, you have to be able to make sure that you're explaining what the dashboards are showing. You're telling the story based on what the data is giving you. And so what is a dashboard? Again, most of us know that. It's where we put all that key information in the same place. It combines, most of the time your dashboards are going to take multiple data sets and put them together and kind of create like calculations, or really kind of, I don't want to say manipulate the data, but put it together in a format that tells the story or helps you tell the story. So that's a lot of what dashboards are. There's different types, of course, the strategic ones. They're providing information over the longest time frame. So they're usually from like a single place, and then that's just driven there long term. And then operational is short term. It's the most common type of dashboard, just to let you know. Mostly that's what you would see. It allows businesses to track and maintain their immediate operational processes in light of our goals. So again, that's the one we usually see. Analytical has the mathematic, it's the data sets that you're putting together that contains the most amount of data that you would have. So again, Claire already touched on this. Tableau is one of those platforms that the department has access to. And there's an online version I think you can request. And I think it's a free just speak it all out, I'm not 100% sure. But you can, there may be a fee for your department. We'd have to check on that. So check with your supervisors or check with, but there is, I know you could also request for it to be a dashboard one. And just like Claire said, you can build your own dashboards. You can do your stuff, and you can, create things for your team or for your office or for your division or whatever it is that you're doing. But those are not going to be those ones that you're going to be able to share out, really. It's going to be local to you. Potentially, maybe you could put it on like a Teams or something. I don't know how that works, but I'm just saying, Tableau is great. I'm going to show you some examples of what the data can do in Tableau. And another, like I said, we do have an example of where we actually put this into practice. So when you're building a dashboard, so again, the dashboard, let's because I was like, okay, again, same as somebody else had said earlier today. When I was putting this together, I was like, I don't want to be bored trying to tell y'all about this, so I'm going to try to make this as interesting as possible. So let me connect it. So again, we're talking about getting the KPIs, but then once you get your KPIs and you get your data, okay, how are you going to display that? So this is your dashboard diagram. And so you want to ask, like, what are some, what's the purpose of this? How do we want to put this data out there? Why do we want to share this data? What are we looking to gain from this data? Because again, that tells you what you need to feed into this, right? That you're going to be measuring and all these pieces. So then you're preparing and you're gathering it. You might have to clean the data again to figure out like time frames and all those things that are going, the analyzations that you're going to be making. And then again, if you're going to be able to share it, all that. And then what are you going to be able to do with that? So, okay, so this is where we did an example. We worked with Division 6, and we went down and met with them and talked with them about some of their, developing some effective metrics, some KPIs, and then also the dashboarding tools and how we could help them kind of accomplish some of that, what they're thinking, their vision. So again, this is that same little circle one that I had earlier about developing your KPI. It's just in a list form. So step one is we met with them. We sat down. We just brainstormed. This is just a screenshot of Whiteboard. I don't know if y'all have used Whiteboard, but when you go into some of our office tools that we have, it's one of those great tools. It's just a blank slate that you get to add little Post-it notes, or you get to just type all over it. You can change your fonts. You can add, it's a whiteboard. It's just on your computer. And so it's really great. It's great. Again, it's great for brainstorming. So we just kind of jotted down notes and worked from this to meet with them. And we talked about, their overall business strategy. One of their value or their mission in Division 6 is to do it once, do it right, accountable, and on budget. And I thought that was great. And they're like, this is what we want to do. This is our bottom, this is what we are wanting to accomplish. This is where we are at. So I was like, that's our strategy. Let's look on some goals for that, right? So steps 2 and 3, we worked on, setting the goals to achieve that, identifying those critical success factors. The main areas that they wanted to focus on were they wanted to look at construction. Certainly, this is again as this overdraft stuff was coming out. So they wanted to look at construction and pull all the budget information, and not only just budget of right there, but like the what was tangled to it, right? So what's all going to be the cost. He wanted some maintenance information. We met with Drew Cox. So there was maintenance information that he wanted, and I don't expect y'all to read this. It's just an example of how we used the whiteboard and what everything looks like. And so then project development also, and then the whole division, different ways they wanted to do some stuff. So that's each of the different blocks. And then what we decided, or how we said that a measure or metric is effective, is can it be reported? And I shared that just a little bit ago. Like, can you report on it? Is it going to allow you to have that accountability? Can you make adjustments and identify those knowledge gaps? And so this is just, those arrows are just showing how each one of these, what they're meeting. Like, is it effective, or do we need to regroup? Is it hitting all of them? And then in each of these boxes are just some of those questions to ask. So then in step 4, we determined what is going to be measured and how to collect that information. So again, for us, we're not as familiar, certainly, with Division 6. And I have worked in a division, but it was more maintenance. And so I didn't have as much construction information or where they're pulling their data. I mean, definitely we knew about high cams or whatever. So we needed to know with them, okay, like, where are you getting your data? Where would we pull information from? How could we, like, what are the sources of this? What can we look at to even try to figure out the metric to measure these things? And so, so that was a lot of the discussion and going through that information, what that looks like, who's pulling these reports, just all of that. How was it going to be measured? Those are a lot of different questions we had to ask. And then the steps 5 and 6 is, we wanted to create a sustainable process for that analysis and that monitoring. It's not beneficial if you're just doing it that one time. I mean, it can be done that one time for you to see how you've been. Like, are you meeting your performance this one time? But to me, if you're going to be effective, you want to continually if you're going to continually do this process or do this work that your office is doing, you want to see how you're doing. And you want to continually see that. And as you make adjustments, you want to be able to adjust your indicator maybe, or even just continually look at that and monitor, like, how are you doing? We've adjusted our process. Now we're going to measure it again. And have we made improvement? And be able to see that analysis of all that information. So we wanted it to be something that's going to be sustainable for them, something they're going to continually be able to look at and use. And so we did a Tableau dashboard for them. It looks similar to some of what Claire was showing. And what we did is it ties in to, again, all of their project information. It is not live data. That is our next step, is to try to hopefully get with IT and see if we can connect that with live data that's coming in from SAP or from HiCams or whatever, to be able to automatically pull this. We have a way through the web that we can go in and pull these reports, and just that's easily filtered in there for them. And so I think we're doing it monthly. Is that what we're doing? I think we're doing it monthly for them so they can pull in. And right now we're just kind of in pilot phase. So they're looking through it. So far they've looked at it. They've had some questions, some adjustments that they wanted us to make. To some of the reporting, some of the drop downs, just the functionality of what it looks like. And so, but anyway, so what they're able to do now is this is a way for them to measure those different, like, how are they doing on their budget for their maintenance stuff. Are they able to perform this work for this amount? Do they need to, is there adjustments that need to be made? So it's all the information there. And again, I'm not division, so I'm just making stuff up now of how they're using this. But there's ways for them to be able to look at this. They were very pleased, and according to what we had gotten from them, it met the goal of what they were looking at as being able to get those metrics. And so now, once we can get this in place for them, they'll be able to take those measurements and look at this information. Just to show you a little bit more, this is some other visualizations that Tableau is available to do. They can definitely do the chart over with the amount, like at the larger amounts, bigger circles. Definitely bar graphs, the state with different areas. And so, of course, this would be statewide information, certainly. But in their county, one of the things they were talking about, they wanted to filter down by actual, the actual county maintenance engineer, their actual resident, or the, not just the office, but the person, and kind of go through there as well. So anyway, there's that. And then, so for next steps for you, if you're thinking about looking at making a dashboard, or looking at coming up with, key performance indicators, or anything to kind of measure some of your stuff, assess some of the work that you're doing, the biggest thing is, to come up with those ideas. You can follow some of this process. You can reach out to us, and we can try to walk you through this process or plug you in with someone who can help. Definitely want to be involving IT, because if there's solutions to dashboards that we can tie in, or if there's already something that's out there that's being measured, again, through SAP, or the EBS dashboard has already reports that are going, or something like that, we want to make sure that we're capturing that information. And then figuring out how the best way is to gather all of that. So anyway, that is all that I have. Yes. So do y'all have any questions? We'll take questions for all three of us, if you have any. Nope. Everybody wants to go home. If you have overdraft questions, boys,
Don't go to those.
analysis